Your source for all things Texas Tech. This is the Ask Level podcast from Double T 97.3.
Hey, what's happening? Welcome into Ask Level, the podcast, episode number 20. The big 2-0 level. We've done this for a little while. He's Chris Level. I'm Chois Woodman. So appreciate all you guys listening in.
Happy New Year, everyone. Yeah, I know it's kind of late in the party there.
Yeah,
but,
a little bit.
We may have said that last week. I can't remember, but,
You can't have, you can't wish someone a Happy New Year too much, right?
Before we know about it, or before we know it's going to be Valentine's Day.
Yeah. Walmart already tells us, like, we're past Valentine's Day. Have they moved on to Easter yet?
Yeah.
They're usually pretty quick. Or St. Patty's Day, I guess, is the next one. But this is the 20th episode, so we appreciate everybody listening. Level, just telling everybody out there that the podcast has been pretty successful so far, and we appreciate all that. We've had listeners from Japan, Germany, Brazil, Costa Rica, Canada, the UK, Italy, Serbia, Ukraine. So downloads from all over the place for this podcast.
Wow.
So
that is crazy.
So we appreciate everybody that's listening.
Absolutely.
For the first 19 episodes. Unfortunately, this episode probably going to be a little, more down than some we've done because we'll be hoops heavy, and there's been some struggles. An 0-3 start so far for Texas Tech and Big 12 play, and not easy games coming up this week. This is a team that has played in 3 games that you could argue you could have won any of those games. But unfortunately, you sit here in 0-3, and it feels like the hellfire and brimstone type of situation because of how tough this league is. You can't really dig yourself in a hole very deep.
Well, yeah, and you've picked just a bad year to be banged up. I think I just, this roster is just not near as deep as it's been in recent years either. So you also are not in as good of a position to overcome some of key pieces missing as you were. Because I go back to last year. To open up close to conference play, but it was in early January. I think it was like January the 8th or so, and you faced Kansas, and you had no Kevin McCullough, you had no TJ Shannon.
Sure.
And you won that game because you had Clarence Dondolny step up, but you also had, Davion Warren and Adonis Arms and Bryson Williams and Marcus Santos Silva. You had a lot of older, really capable guys, and you got it done. But yeah, this team, there's just certain things that, there's certain guys that have shown you that they're ready to roll and that can compete at this level and have gotten better. And then there's just other guys that just have not, are very much learning or haven't shown you that they're capable, yet of being able to play or make a shot or, step up in a big game consistently. I mean, you had some moments versus Kansas and versus Oklahoma to where certain guys make a play here or there, but it's like, can anybody do it consistently? And that's really the difference, because, I Grant Sherfield for Oklahoma, Mike Miles for TCU. You have Jalen Wilson and DeJuan Harris in that case for Kansas. And you just, this is one of those deals where even if you guard these guys, they're still capable of beating you and hitting key shots. And, even the freshman for Oklahoma, Milo Suzan, he had a phenomenal game against the Red Raiders with 18 points. And that's on the road and in his first conference game. And he stepped up and, he was 7 of 10 from the field, and you just don't really have. I mean, Pop Isaacs, I think, has been that guy for you, but when you don't have him, it's just not. What they had on the floor versus the Sooners, just not. Very shorthanded, and it's frustrating, I think, for fans and everybody involved to kind of see that you start out 0-3 because you look at it a little bit, and even though you've got basically the entire conference season left, Now you look at it and go, okay, how do we get out of this? And it's going to be extremely difficult to do that because of what you said. The league is, it's just a monster. I mean, it just is. And there's teams in it that are a lot better than we thought. And there's teams that have loads of talent that aren't quite as good on paper yet. But you think that once they kind of figure it out, look out. But that's kind of where you're at right now with 0-3 and 2 road trips, looming this week.
Yeah, I think it's such the transfer portal, the transfers are such a finicky thing if you don't already have some depth, because you're counting so much on them and you're comparing last year's team and this year's team and the starts you get off to. But you hit on just about every transfer, not all of them, but just about every transfer last year with Adonis Arms, obviously, and
Davion Warren, Bryson Williams,
all these transfers did really well for you. And there's guys that are just almost completely empty for you this year with Demarion Williams and Kerwin Walton, and you're just not getting what you hoped for out of similar guys. I mean, you look at Demarion Williams compared to an Adonis Arms. I mean, Williams probably had a better resume coming to Texas Tech for what he did at Gardner-Webb versus Adonis Arms, who wasn't starting at Winthrop. So you never know what's going to happen. And that's what's tough about this world of the transfer portal. And if you don't already have that padded depth, and if you have such a young team with a lot of freshmen like Texas Tech does, that's what makes it so difficult. So the 0-3 start is obviously not ideal. You're staring right down the barrel of a potential 0-5 start with road trips to Ames and Texas or in Austin this weekend. But it's a doozy of the Big 12. Not out of it, but it feels like this team's going to have to figure a lot of things out. And you go back to the most recent game in the OU one, really difficult to win when you're missing 2 of your best 3 players. So, I mean, you don't want to make excuses, but this team that's already lacking depth, Daniel Batcho and Pop Isaacs, I'll get your take, but I would say they're 2 of your best 3, right, on this team, or 2 of your most that's important 3.
Yeah, that's kind of that's part of the problem is your statement there, is because I mean, there's been times when Davion Harmon has looked like one of your top guys, and he did versus Oklahoma. I think he comes off of one of his worst games versus Kansas, but he had been arguably one of your best players all season long. I think he's just, and I think Jalen Tyson is the one. Yeah, I don't know if I would put Jalen in that category or at all yet, but I mean, and I just think, Pop has been playing well recently, and so we've got some some recency bias, I guess would be the term there, because there was times when Pop was struggling, but I think that he clearly your best 3-point shooter, and then you are obviously missing your best rebounder and rim protector, and there's no. This is the problem against Oklahoma is that you felt like you added a ton of shooting in the offseason, and yet there's just, without Pop, there's just not any perimeter game at all versus Oklahoma. I mean, 2 of 18, and it was rough. And Old Banner's going to hit his fair share. He had to play nearly the entire game, played 44 minutes versus the Sooners. So he played the entire game and then some. And so he was being leaned on heavily. But yeah, the rest of them, I mean, Kerwin Walton couldn't get a shot off. Demarion Williams does make a 3. You got one from Robert Jennings, which is not on anybody's scouting report. Just his second made 3 of the season. But Jalen just was a bad game for him. He just was off, and I think, but that's college basketball. And you hear a lot of, hey, we are young and inexperienced and all that, and that this is all true. It's just, you wonder if Mark and his staff maybe had a bit of a redo if they would have elected not to go so young, because it was their choice to go with a bunch of freshmen. And that's why it's really going to be tough to overcome what appears to this point as to be just kind of a miss on Kerwin Walton and Demarion Williams. I mean, it's not their fault. I think that, that they wanted to come here and be a part of this, but just to this point, they haven't shown the ability to play a big role in this league yet, and that's a fair statement.
Sure it is.
I think, and your big offseason acquisition, it's kind of yet to play a minute yet in Fardaws Amax. So this season is just it's frustrating. But there is no really a backup for Pop. There really is no backup for Batcho with what they bring to you, and without two of them. In some ways, I was shocked that Texas Tech kept it as close as they did, missing those two guys. With what I knew was going to be out there, and you had 8 scholarship players, I was at some level surprised, because people can say Oklahoma is not very good. I would agree, but I disagree. Oklahoma is not very good nationally. I think they are a pretty good basketball team. You just, when you look at it, when you compare them to the upper echelon of the Big 12 to this point, I would agree that they don't belong in the top half just yet. Their style of play is also what makes people think, oh, they muck it up. It's ugly style. It's not up and down the floor. I mean, they want to slow it down and grind it. And so people but that's a pretty good team. And it's a team that beat Ole Miss, Seton Hall, Florida. I'm trying to remember the other, that they reeled off 4 in the non-conference. And then they lost to Texas by 1. And they lose to Iowa State by 3. So they lost 2 conference games coming into that one by a total of 4 points. So, and I thought they were but when they pulled away by about 11 or 12, I thought, okay, this is kind of what I was fearing. But they just, and against Kansas and Oklahoma, you're just giving up way too many looks from deep, clean looks from deep. And it's killing you, because teams are good enough to knock them down. And, you just look at the difference. I mean, you made 2 threes, they made 9. Yeah. I think Kansas made 11 against you earlier in the week. And so that's just got to be something that's got to stop, because it's just killing you. And these games are all close, but the 3-point differential has certainly been a difference in the 2 home losses anyways. But it feels like a long time ago that you had this 29 game winning streak at home, doesn't it?
It does, because you've lost 2 in a row now. Mm-hmm. And I think what's so frustrating, you're talking about the 3-pointers, but so frustrating about watching the defense right now is that so many of the buckets, there'll be one possession that's really sound defensively. The very next possession, you're giving up a wide open 3-pointer, a wide open layup. And there's just such inconsistency from one possession to the next with this defense right now.
This is what you get with freshmen.
Yeah.
That's why coaches are reluctant to lean on them in a league like the Big 12 as much as they are, just because there's exceptions and there's guys that, but it's just play in and play out, game in and game out, week in and week out. It just doesn't let up, and it will expose you if you're not locked in. And just most players are not mentally, ready to handle what comes at them, either physically or mentally. And that's what leads to inconsistency. And I mean, Mark even said it after the game versus Oklahoma, we forget our assignment and this and that. And so in some ways he may have to simplify. Yeah. He may have to just simplify to make it easier on his guys, because you're right. It's there's just too much being given up, which right now, you come into the game averaging 79 a game. Now that stat is a bit quirky in that you had there was a few games where you had 100 plus in some non-conference games against some really lower end teams. So that stat is skewed, but you really struggle to score. And I think that against Oklahoma, you were utilizing, when your defense was good, it was turning into offense for you in transition opportunities, specifically by Davion Harmon. But when you have to execute in the half court, it just doesn't look like there's much chemistry or much movement, or, that's probably the wrong terms to use, but I'm just not sure where the points come from. Maybe it's fair to say.
There's a lot of standing around in the half court, and a lot of everybody's kind of waiting for someone else to do something, or so it seems.
And Mark said to me immediately after the game in the post-game interview for the radio broadcast, we are not. This was his comment. We're not very good individually. We have to play, good team defense, and unfortunately, you're not great on defense right now. And I think they did show you some good defense in spurts versus Oklahoma. I think there were times when it looked pretty energetic and connected and all those things, but they just
kept you in the game for a while. I mean,
it just
when your offense was sputtering.
Yeah, sustaining it's the hard thing. So,
sure. Yeah, I think one more thing, and then we'll move on from basketball. This feels like this team just has no margin for error because
it's
how
very small.
The lack of depth that you have. You look at all three of your first three games in Big 12 play. Kevin O'Banner has a bad game against TCU, and it hurts you. Then you have Davion Harmon, who has a bad game against Kansas, and that hurts you. And then against Oklahoma, you have Jalen Tyson, who has an off game. And it's just, if any of your if it almost feels like you have to have a good game from your starting five if you're going to have a chance to win right now.
Well, yeah, you need too often. You've had just two guys play really well, you constantly need a third. That's basically, to dumb it down, kind of what you're saying right there. Mm-hmm. You need a third guy being able to help you make plays and bail you out, hit shots, things like that. And far too much, I guess, in the last week and a half or so. It's just you have two of three or two of your five, whatever you want to, and again, part of this is, do I feel like if Batcho was completely healthy and Pop was completely healthy and whatnot, that you would be 0-3 in the league? No, I think you figure out a way to win maybe one or two of those games. I'm not saying you would have won all three, but that just speaks to your point about there's just not a lot of margin for error. There's just certain things that need to happen with the way this team's built. And, and again, I go back to, you're young because, they felt like that this was the way to go, and mm-hmm. to be young. And you just hope there's a payoff there. That's the lumps you're taking right now. You just hope that the Lamar Washingtons and all those kinds of players, there's a payoff in time. And it's tricky because that would be the bit of an exception in college basketball, whereas you keep some of these players for 3 or 4 years, because too often people, they just go closer to home, or they right. Go find a different situation. Who knows what it would be, but yeah, man, you just need to get healthy and keep grinding. I don't know what else to say about it other than, but you're going to go against a ranked team that has not lost a Big 12 game, and it's got a world of confidence in Iowa State, mm-hmm. who just reeled off a couple of road wins last week. And
yeah.
So anyway, it's going to be extremely difficult. And Texas, their coaching situation has been, one, like a bit of a mess, as we all know. But their roster and their talent is old and deep, and they've got lots of options. If they're locked in. So that's what you're staring at this week. And then you come home to play an extremely talented Baylor team that is very talented and was picked to win this league. Right. The media picked the Bears to win this league, and yet they've started off 0-3. So that's crazy. Just go figure.
Yeah, this league is like we were talking about with football a few months ago, or in the last few months. This league is freaking nuts too. I mean, you truly have no idea what's going to happen anytime the ball is thrown up any given night in this league. Anybody can beat anybody, but it does feel like Texas Tech is sitting there towards the bottom and has quite the ladder to climb. But
yeah, I mean, you're sitting there with West Virginia and Baylor as the only teams that haven't won a Big 12 game yet. And I mean, this was you started off ranked and you had some expectations and some hope, and but I think you just go back to maybe some of the players that you chose. Maybe you would love a redo there. That may be harsh. I don't know, but that it's not how this thing works. You can't go make a trade, and you just caught a really unlucky blow with Fardaws being
sure.
With a foot injury. So
who knows? Maybe he's the savior of Texas Tech basketball. I wouldn't count on it, but maybe he's a huge boost when he does come back.
Well, yeah, but Mark even indicated, I think the other day, I think before the Oklahoma game, hey man, this may be 2 weeks to 4 weeks away still.
Yeah.
So but he's not in a boot anymore, so that's a good sign. So
big man and foot injuries, man.
Yeah, that's the reality of it.
Okay. So good news for Texas Tech basketball, though. You won't get to reap the benefits of this year, but moving into next year, Kyeron Linsay ends up committing to Texas Tech from Georgia. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, he's signed. I think he's got all the academic stuff filled out. Everything. Okay. He's basically gonna be in the program here pretty quick. And here's the reality of that. If he was eligible to play right now, I'm not so certain he's not playing heavy minutes, if not even starting for you.
Sure.
So he gives you some length, and we had kind of touched on this in recent podcasts about his the possibility of him, and here's the thing about like having an available scholarship at semester is that you're able to add guys like a Jalen Tyson and now a Kyeron Linsay. Whereas if you don't have an available scholarship and you have to wait, maybe there's a lot more suitors. I don't know. So that they've kind of chosen to operate this way on purpose for these reasons. And hey, let's go get a guy at semester,
right? And
you can get him in the program and kind of get him adjusted, and then then you get him for year number two. The thing that there's some thoughts there that hey, look, once they leave that initial school and they switch, they can't really go anywhere anymore until they graduate. So you get that benefit. And then two, I think there's a thought about, last year I understood it. This year, I think that when you look at the roster, you're going to be like, what? But I think that trying to manage expectations with playing time with 12 guys as opposed to 13 is a bit easier.
Yeah.
But I think, you certainly love to have had that 13th scholarship with somebody that could have
sure
help you this right now based on what we're seeing with the injuries and all that. But you didn't, nobody saw that coming either. So anyway, but yeah, Kyeron Linsay would be a welcomed addition for sure, because he had a lot of options out of high school. He's a legit 6'7", 6'8", very, very athletic, and I think that's a good addition, but I just wish it was sooner than later. But you're gonna have to wait till next fall before he can help you.
Well, did you see, switching gears to football here, did you see Brett McMurphy's way too early top 25?
I did.
Okay, yeah. So Texas Tech comes in at number 14 on this list on Brett McMurphy's. He works for that Action Network, used to be an ESPN guy, but is this foreshadowing for what we should expect during the preseason for the hype around Texas Tech?
Yeah, I think a little bit. Yeah, I do. I don't think we have a clear picture yet of everybody's roster. I don't think all the movement has taken place yet with Tech or everybody else. I think there's still some things to kind of sort through, but I think you get a pretty good idea that, because I looked at this thing and I'm scrolling through it, and I'm like, I guess I thought upper teens, maybe lower 20s, kind of, head nod, and I kept scrolling. I mean, basically, you're the second Big 12 team listed in this thing, because I think TCU was at what, 10th or 11? Okay, yeah. And you're at 14. So they had Texas, they had Kansas State. I don't know if I'm missing anybody else, but so yeah, you got some respect there, and I think you've earned it, because you've had back-to-back seasons now where there's been improvement from one year to the next. You've won back-to-back bowl games, and you've got a lot of experience returning, and a lot of and so I think that you're right. You're going to start to see Texas Tech be a trendy, team to talk about, and it'll be up to Joey to kind of hype that, but also, I don't know if I'm ready to say they're ready to go win the Big 12 just yet. I mean, because you haven't ever won one, but I think that, you definitely belong in the conversation of teams that'll be in the mix. But again, we're way early there.
We are.
But to answer your question, to wrap that up, that is a sign of kind of, I think, what you can expect in this offseason.
Yeah.
And it kind of, you'd much rather have it than not. But part of it is it kind of sucks in a way. It's a lot more fun to be off the radar and just kind of win and kind of surprise everybody.
Sure.
Because when there's expectations, you don't enjoy the victories as much along the way because in some ways they're expected. So I think in some ways we have to be careful about skipping to the end of the story.
Right.
Because you're still building, you're still trying to change your culture. You're still trying to, it doesn't mean you shouldn't have expectations. It's just, I think winning 4 to end the season and winning a big bowl game, it's just such a feel good. But there's going to be a little bit of a different pressure, I guess, on your team and your program from the external portion this offseason.
Well, McMurphy also puts out a power rating, which is basically a power ranking on how you do. And Tech finished 12th in his power rating because of what you talk about there, winning the last 4 in a row.
And I will tell you, I did want to make note of where Oregon was ranked, and I believe both the Oregon schools, crazy, are ranked in this poll. But I think Oregon's a top 10 team. Am I mistaken?
I believe, number 10,
like 9.
exactly.
Okay, number 10. I was going to say 9 or 10. So that non-conference game in Lubbock really sets up to be kind of a national type game, and I'd be willing to bet when it was set up that Oregon thought, and now they're thinking, okay, well, this is, but that's an extremely important game because if you, I feel like we're talking about this way early, but if you were to pull that one off, if it's kind of stays that way, if that was the real rankings, if you were to pull that one off, I mean, I think all of a sudden now it's like, okay, look out. So anyway,
we are talking about it way early, but your first game of the season on the road at Wyoming is no cakewalk either because that's a good football team.
That's a team that went to a bowl game too, and it's you're right, it's on the road for sure.
So it's going to be a fun season. It's funny looking through his power rank or his way too early top 25. It's got the highlights for the schedule and every other team outside the Big 12. You got 4 or 5 games here because it's got their conference games, but the Big 12 teams, it's got 1 or 2 games only in the non-conference because we still don't know a Big 12 schedule to this point. Right. So
you will you'll get that in a week or so, though. Okay. I believe, yeah. So we won't have to wait much longer.
Hoping so. I'm ready to see it. I know a lot of people are anxious for it. And then speaking of football, we get some news that Austin McNamara will return, and that's some big news for this program.
Yeah, I didn't want to let that slip under the radar, and that it kind of that announcement just gets dropped in there with a lot going on in sports and everything like that. But I think that's obviously a big deal. I think Joey would tell you first off, hey, look, man, I'd love not to ever see Austin other than holding for field goals and extra points.
Yeah,
but it is nice to know because I think Austin McNamara is an NFL punter.
Agreed.
And I think that it's nice to have that back this next year. And I think that was the way he was leaning, when around bowl time, but you hadn't heard anything officially. And he does in fact come back and say, hey man, let's run it back. So just another, key piece, because you talk about, like what preseason teams would look like. And I mean, he's got a chance to be the preseason first team punter in the Big 12 conference.
Yeah. And it's so dangerous for those punters and kickers when they do choose to go to the NFL, because if you don't, as unfortunately we're seeing from last year, if you don't succeed immediately in the NFL, it feels like that door closes so fast. So you got to make sure you're 100% ready to make that leap if you're going to go. So if you've got any reserves or think you can improve the stock a little bit, you like that decision from Austin McNamara, and hopefully it turns out to be a really good one and he has a fantastic season hunting 55 yarders once a game.
Yeah, that's right. No doubt.
Once again. All right. Yeah. So a few questions and then we'll wrap this one up. First one, there was some big news, obviously, from the University of Texas, who Tech will play later in the week this week. that they fire Chris Beard officially close to a month after the whole domestic violence charges. Simon asked, what are your feelings about Beard getting fired at UT level?
Well, I don't pretend to know all the info that everybody's got. It certainly seems like there's some legal jockeying right now about should he have been fired, and I think there's probably an angling for buyout with contract and all these different things. But I just, with what we knew, it was going to be hard to envision a scenario to where he would be back on the sidelines coaching at Texas again. I've known Chris for a long time. I did not like that he moved and took Texas, but that's his choice, and that was where he graduated from school. So I wasn't wishing Texas basketball good luck at all, and but I hate it that it has all come to this. It's just a sad situation between Chris and Randy, and I've known both of them for a while. I've known Chris a long time, and so I just didn't.
Yeah,
I don't find any pleasure in a very sad situation
no one should.
Such as that. And there's lots of families and lots of people involved, but so yeah. I mean, it just and I don't know what happens with the Texas job now. If Rodney Terry has a chance to keep it, if they will. Look elsewhere. But it's a very talented team. They were playing about as good as anybody in the country.
Yeah.
At the time that this incident happened, and but they're 2-1 in the league and still ranked in the top 10 right now, and they're going to be a handful. But I can only imagine what those kids were thinking. As this is all playing out, not sure who their coach is or who the coach is going to be and all that stuff. So I've lived through an interim coach season with Chris Walker, and it's tricky. I mean, as a broadcaster, obviously, and traveling, and it's just you're just not real sure what everybody's thinking. Is everybody worried about their next move? Is everybody, like, whether you're a coach or a player, you just don't know. There's just a lot of uncertainty there. So, but in the portal era, I guess you don't have to worry about it as much because you can just bail out if you want to.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, but yeah, just a sad situation there.
Another basketball question, but going towards Texas Tech. Leah asks, is Pop okay, or is it just a concussion or something else? Also, what happened to KJ Allen?
Yeah, KJ Allen's got I think it's a muscle injury or something. It's a lower leg injury. I think that it's not bad, but it's also something I think Mark termed that it may take a bit. So I don't know if he's due back in the next game or so. So it may be a week. I don't know. I'm speculating there, and I think I think Pop is in. Look, he put it on social media that he has a concussion, and he was wearing sunglasses, and so I'm sure he's in protocol. And so I think that he could in fact miss the next game versus Iowa State that's on your schedule, and could be back before the Texas game. We'll see, but that's up to doctors and protocol and all that. But I think that was a concussion situation there. So I'm sure he's in protocol, and it happened on the last play there where there was no foul called. So that's what's frustrating, because if the officials. If the officials make a call there, Batcho's not hurt either. That's the frustrating part. If they make a call,
it's really frustrating
on him getting dragged down and Pop, getting concussed and all those things, then then Batcho never runs down and tries to block a dunk and doesn't hurt his finger and all that stuff. So that's just, but hey man, when it rains, it pours. And you just kind of hit a streak of bad luck here.
Just had to make one of two calls there to be able to avoid the frustrations. Scotty asks, sticking with basketball, would this team make the tournament if they played in another conference? I'm not saying we're out just yet, but being in the Big 12 can make good teams look bad.
Well, there are national pundits that have said and written such things, in that there are lower end teams in this league that will win other leagues around the country. I don't know if they specifically named those leagues or anything like that, but I think it does speak to, you just look at the Ken Palm rankings, you look at the net rankings, everybody in the Big 12, and Texas Tech is near the bottom of both of those, just so I'm clear, but they're ranked in the 40s or 50s nationally in both, but every team in the Big 12 is ranked in the top 40 or top 50, depending on which kind of set of rankings you're looking at. So that's nearly unheard of. and you just look at strength of schedules for all these teams left when you got to play everybody else, and it's just a nightmare because everybody has got any win you get is a big one, and it's kind of a quad one type win, whether it's home, away, whatever, just because of where everybody's ranking is right now.
And to your point, ESPN's Basketball Power Index before the league started, they showed the remaining toughest. The BPI showed the remaining toughest schedules in the country. Number 1 through number 10 were all of the Big 12 teams. And it shows exactly just how the metrics look at this league and how truly difficult it is. All right, last one before we wrap it up. This one's from Roger. Are there any other players that Texas Tech could land in the transfer portal? When does that transfer portal window close for football?
Oh, yeah, there's plenty of options. The window will close on around, I think it's the 16th, 17th, 18th, something like that. Should be middle of next week, depending on when you're listening to this. And then the window, it closes, but then there's a new window in May after spring football concludes. Yeah. So there's going to be, if you think your roster is set or anybody's roster is set, that's just not the way that this thing is going to go. There will be more movement, whether it's a departure or an arrival or whatever. And so I don't know of anybody that's imminent right now. I think that if you're looking for something on defense, they would maybe look at a DB/edge rusher, but it's got to fit some criteria there. For them to bring something in. And, again, spots are very, very limited with the Red Raiders at this point right now.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's going to be a ton of movement, but again, I would anticipate some things shaking out after the spring too, that just kind of, that's normal.
Sure. Do we see any chance that Tech adds another quarterback just to pad depth in that room, or is that more of a reaction thing if you lose another quarterback?
If you lose one, you will add one. If you don't lose what you've got, because right now you're looking at Tyler Shuck, Baron Morton, and Jake Strong, who will be here in this. Your freshman will be here in the spring. You're good there. If you were to lose one of those three for whatever reason, then you would add one. However, if you don't, this is what you're going to go at it with.
All right, Level. Another one bites the dust. We put 20 of these to bed, so appreciate it. We'll do this again next week. Hopefully Tech can get a win or two.
That's the song that the Junkyard Dog, way back in the day, the professional wrestler Junkyard Dog used to play. Dog. Yeah, he used to come in with a dog collar on, and thump was always like that was his like finishing maneuver. But he played that song when he
always leave it to Level
into the ring
for the obscure. What is that? 80s wrestling reference?
That would have been 80s. Yeah, right, I guess nice. So. Yeah,
well done.
So I'm dating myself a bit there, but yeah. So, but hey, you're the one that led me down that road.
I love it.
Another one bites the dust. Yeah. So
all right, Level. Have a great week, man.
I appreciate it, Woodman. Thanks, man.
That is Chris Level. I'm Chois Woodman. You've been tuned in to the Ask Level podcast right here on Double T 97.3.
You've been listening to the Ask Level podcast, powered by Double T 97.3. For more from Lubbock Sports Station, go to doublet973.com.